Hey everyone, Trevor here with another segment of Just the Tip down here at Guitars Plus in Victoria, BC. Today we have a bit of a rare oddball. This is a 1989 Hamer Virtuoso, kind of a unique specimen in the guitar family tree. Bit of a history lesson about these guys. They were made between 1987 and 89, and there's about 30 to 40 of them out in the wild. What makes this guy really unique is, first of all, the frets. If you can count them, it's got 36 all the way up to the top there. It has an elongated scale length to accommodate those frets as well, going to about 26¼ inch. This guy also has scalloped frets, where the material's been removed between the fret wire, made popular by Yngwie Malmsteen, and allows for different vibrato techniques and a bit of easier play because there's no material to slow your fingers down. It goes down to an old Seymour Duncan hot rails, and then a Shaler Floyd Rose style locking tremolo system. At the time this was manufactured, Kramer Guitars was the only guitar company that was allowed to have an actual Floyd Rose tremolo system. Proved to be a popular design, so a lot of manufacturers, like Hamer, reached out to Shaler, who was manufacturing those bridges, and got their own name stamped onto their own base plate. But in all intents and purposes, this is basically a Floyd Rose. So this guitar had a simple work order on paper, just some fretwork, and then we opened the case and it's a Virtuoso. It's got 36 frets. That's no problem, but it's going to be a little tight getting up there to especially the 35 and 36 partial frets. The big one is intonation, which is kind of an interesting question. Most guitars you intonate to the 12th fret because that's kind of the halfway point for a 2-octave guitar scale. But because this has an extended range, where do you intonate? It's a valid question. The more you intonate towards your first position, the more your open position is going to be perfectly in tune, but you'll be way out up here. We usually intonate to the 12th fret because that's a nice balance between both octaves. I could intonate all the way up into this higher register, and then all these notes would be nice and clean and pure, but then your open position would be way off. So to keep things simple, we've talked to the customer about this, and we're going to just intonate to the usual 12th fret because that's kind of, again, the nice balance between everything here. And lastly, we'll just set it up with some 9-42s, an E standard, and give this guy a good little polish. Okay, so let's take it over to the bench. Here we go. Big neck. Big bench. Big job. So what I'm thinking right now is, how do I take measurements on a scalloped fingerboard? We need to see if this neck is straight or level. If I just sight down the neck, it kind of looks like there's a bit of a ramp here. All of the frets are kind of congested, and I think it's been pushing the fingerboard up slowly over the years. So we might have like a bit of a relief, Tony Hawk style fingerboard. I'm gonna take some other measurements, of course, to get a baseline of how the guitar is performing before we alter it in any ways. Action at the 12th fret is 1 mil. E6 looks like, so 12th, E6. Oh, was that 1.2 or 1.5? 1.5. Let's see what this pickup is. It's a Seymour Duncan hot rails. And out of curiosity, is the pickup functioning? It works. Nice, and we probably have the easiest control system ever. On, off. Cool. Head over to your 20K on your multimeter. Make sure your volume pot's on. And we have a 15.64K output. Seymour Duncan hot rails. Nothing in the electronic division to really worry about. So the big culprit on these guys is that the crowns are really gone. When you've got a fret, you don't want a nice kind of capped flat point. You want a bit of a peak, because as the string makes contact with that peak, that actually indicates the note. A good little tech tip: put the locking nuts in the order they came off. The strings will grind off the nut, the nut caps here, in different ways and different grinds. So if you put the low E6 onto the high E1 by accident, if you flip them around, that can slide off, so to speak. Unfortunately, this is a set neck or neck through, so we can't just pop off the neck and start doing fret work. A good rule is to protect the guitar at all times. Painter's tape, whether we start using steel wool or sandpaper, any little grit and grime like that. So we don't want any magnetic materials going into our pickup. Got this really cool cream. It's almost, yeah, it's a really like subtle pearl. So usually I would use a notched straight edge like this. This would go onto the fingerboard, and then I could measure whether or not the fingerboard was straight. Now, the tricky part about this is that I don't really have a fingerboard to work with. There's an ever so slight purchase in the scalloping that I could probably get away with it, but I'm gonna be using a flat bar over here too, the machine straight edge, to kind of balance between the two. So if I have to make a truss rod adjustment, we'll know here in a quick second. We've got a bit of a back bow like this. We need to introduce some relief, so we're gonna loosen that rod. Just a little bit of a turn. Get back to our straight edge. Just by loosening the truss rod there, I think I've got a flat bar down here, but there's a little bit of fall away. You can see a tiny, tiny gap there from like fret 23, 24 onward, but that might work to our advantage here. Okay, so now that we have a straight fingerboard, done a truss rod adjustment, made a note of it, we are going to head into the fret rocking stages, man. This is a fret rocker. It is 4 straight edges onto I was gonna say dodecahedron, but that's just a fancy word I like to say. So this is a fret rocker. You measure 3 frets at a time. The center fret is the one you're measuring. And you basically use your pinch your finger and your thumb to act as a fulcrum point, and your other hand can measure to see if there is a rock. If there is a rock, it means that center fret is out of level, in which case we then file it and shape it to eliminate the rock. So ideally we don't want any rocks on these frets. Some people check in motions like that. I find that's a good way to miss a spot. So I kind of act as if I'm bending a note, which would climb up the whole fret and then back down as well too. So, okay. So 3-corner safe file. Took all of 2-3 swipes to eliminate that. Moving on. But now that I've changed the height of this fret, there may be an issue coming with this one. I've gone through a couple of passes with my fret rocker and my 3-corner file, and we've kind of knocked down everything, but that's not the, we're not quite there yet. So we're gonna go into the crowning process. So fret crowning file has a concave surface with teeth into it that correspond to the gauge here. You can use different crowns for different motions and kind of rock them back and forth if needed. But with the marker drawing out the whole flat cap of the crown, I'm now going to use this file to introduce a very thin line. You can see on these guys, like this region of the fingerboard is flatter. That's just where you're going to be getting more bending, so that bending motion is actually what flattens out your crowns. So after the fret crowning, do another check with the fret rocker because you have changed the shape of the fret, so you have to double check all that. I've gone through it. I'm pretty happy with everything seems all level and crowned, so that's great. Now we're into polishing. I can get away with most of the polishing using these great little spatulas that we sell here at Guitars Plus. They save you from having to do too much taping. I like using a fret rubber. This is basically a eraser with a bit of polishing compound and aggregate into it so that it polishes the fret. But I like to use it to wrap around different sandpapers and grits and everything to now start sanding out my scratches from all the files and crowning files. So now it's just a polishing show. Fretwork, thankfully, is all done. Nice and shiny. Polished it up to with the fret rubbers and then some cleaning and everything. And then being a lacquered fingerboard, I could also spray over everything and kind of clean it up with some of this Music Nomad spray, which we love to use in the shop. Cleans a lot of dirt off a lot of guitars and use it all the time. Now at this point, we're starting to get back into the string up stage. So I'm clipping off the bearings on the back end of the 9-42 D'Addario set of strings. And then we're putting them into the blocks. A little tip, when stringing these up, this is not like a hardtail. I do have a little trem block stopper in here that definitely helps, but floating tremolos are a tight balance between the springs inside the body and the string of the guitar. Depending on the gauge and the tuning, you have to balance those two out so that the tremolo is floating just flat, not tilting into the body, not reefing up too high, but just enough so that if the player wants to go back, they can go back and it'll return to 0. If they go forward, and then they come back to 0 again. So every time you add a string onto it, you're going to increase the tension and the other strings are going to go flat. So when I'm stringing up a Floyd, I will often aim for a couple of semitones above the actual note I'm aiming for. So if I'm aiming for a low E, sometimes I'll go up to an E sharp, or sorry, well, sometimes we'll go to an E sharp, which is an F. Other times I'll go to F sharp as I add an A, and then I'll go to F as I add a D, and then as soon as you add the upper 3 strings like G, B, and E, you can kind of just go a sharp E. So we've got this all tuned up. It's 9 to 42, which was the string gauge that was on there previous. So the Floyd basically leveled out. The springs have already been calibrated for that. We haven't changed the tuning either, so this basically returned once we took out that little stop bar that I shoved under the back fine tuners. It just fell out once we reached up to E standard tuning. This is also a good time though to adjust the fine tuners. Sometimes they get bottomed out or they're way too high, so I like to level them out at midpoint because then that gives the player a good deal of adjustment. Okay, so I'm going to show you how the Red Bishop works. I'm going to do it in the bench position though. I'm usually doing this standing because again, you don't tune a Floyd in the bench position, but this little leg clamps against the base plate near the fine tuner. This little claw sits in behind the string block and you tighten it so that you actually have a pretty firm grip with this thumb wheel. What this does is it allows you to pull this saddle back while the string is under tension. It does pull the string a little bit sharp just because the added weight will push the whole thing sharp. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. So now through this slot, use the correct Allen key to unlock the saddle height. And usually this saddle should shove forward because it's under string tension. But now with this thumb wheel, I can actually just pull it back with accuracy and then tighten it back up. Okay, unlock it a little bit and then check for tuning. Okay, that's insulated, frets are all polished. We checked all the crowns, did some spot leveling, checked the electronics, mimicked the string tuning, string gauge, and the action that came in previous, which was to the customer's spec. Re-intonated it with the newly crowned frets. We'll do a final little checkup on this, clean it up, tighten up all the little buttons, and then we're going to pass it off to Colton to hear how this thing plays. Thanks for watching, everyone. This was another segment of Just the Tip with Trevor on the Hamer Virtuoso from 1989. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and we'll see you down here at Guitars Plus.